Nevin Orlin stared at the notification pulsing on his holopad, its soft blue glow reflecting off his azure skin. The message was both exciting and terrifying. Congratulations, Nevin Orlin. You have been selected for the Galactic Union's Interspecies Cultural Exchange Program. Your assignment, Verdian Research Station. Nevin's four-fingered hand trembled slightly as he swiped to read more details. Verdian Station, a remote research outpost orbiting the gas giant Pulus 7, staffed entirely by female Losari scientists and engineers. 87 of them, to be precise, according to the briefing. And soon, one blue-skinned Chromatian male, him. By the 7 moons, Nevin whispered to himself, running a hand through his short silver hair. At 28 standard years, he had never been off-world before. His people, the Chromatians, were rare in the galaxy. Their unique physiology allowing them to photosynthesize through their colored skin made them objects of scientific fascination. Most Chromatians stayed on their homeworld, Prisma, avoiding the attention their appearance drew. But Nevin had always been different. His natural talent for botanical engineering had earned him recognition, and his application to the exchange program had been a wild impulse, one he never expected would be accepted. 3 weeks later, Nevin sat alone in the small transport vessel approaching Verdian Station. His sapphire blue skin had taken on a slight purple tinge at the edges, a Chromatian sign of anxiety. The physical examination required for interstellar travel had been uncomfortable enough, with the medical officers openly fascinated by his biology. How would an entire station of Losari scientists react? He'd studied their species, of course. Tall, willowy humanoids with elongated features, their skin a palette of warm, earthy tones, known for their analytical minds and structured society. The briefing mentioned they were reserved but curious, which could mean anything. Approaching Verdian Station, prepare for docking procedures, announced the automated system. Nevin gazed out the viewport as the station came into view. It was beautiful, a gleaming silver ring adorned with crystalline structures that caught the light of the nearby star, sending rainbow patterns dancing across its surface. 5 petal-like extensions housed the research laboratories, giving the station the appearance of an exotic flower floating in space. As the transport ship docked with a gentle thud, Nevin gathered his few possessions. His specialty was hydroponic systems, techniques for growing plants in nutrient solutions without soil. The station needed help optimizing their food production systems, a perfect application for his skills. The airlock cycled open, and Nevin stepped into a large, white reception chamber. He froze. 87 pairs of amber eyes stared back at him. The entire station complement had gathered to greet him, standing in perfect semicircles. Their heights ranged from just above his own 5'9" to well over 6 feet. Their skin tones varied from light sand to rich umber, with delicate patterns swirling across their exposed arms and faces. Each wore the same sleek gray uniform with colored panels indicating their department. The silence was deafening. Finally, a Losari with delicate facial features and a silver insignia stepped forward. "Welcome to Verdian Station, Specialist Orlin. I am Jorani, Station Administrator. We are honored by your presence." Her voice was melodic but formal. Nevin bowed slightly, remembering his cultural briefing. "The honor is mine, Administrator Jorani. Thank you for welcoming me to Verdian." A soft murmur rippled through the crowd. Nevin saw several Losari leaning toward each other, whispering behind slender hands. Others simply stared, their large eyes unblinking. "Your skin," said a Losari near the front, her voice filled with wonder. "It truly is as described. The azure pigmentation is remarkable." Nevin felt a flush of violet spread across his cheeks. Among his people, commenting directly on skin color was considered intimate, but he reminded himself that different cultures had different norms. "Yes, I am what we call a blue shade among my people. We absorb different wavelengths of light than the green shades or purple shades." This triggered another wave of whispers. Several Losari pulled out small devices, likely scanners or recorders. Administrator Jorani raised a hand, and immediate silence fell. "We will have ample time for scientific observations, colleagues. Let us not overwhelm our guest." She turned to Nevin with what appeared to be an attempt at a warm smile. "Specialist Tevier will show you to your quarters. Tomorrow, you will meet with the hydroponics team." A shorter Losari with honey-colored skin and a green department panel stepped forward, bowing formally. "Please follow me, Specialist Orlin." As Nevin walked through the crowd, the Losari parted to let him pass, but their eyes never left him. He felt like an exotic specimen, which he supposed he was. The sensation wasn't entirely unpleasant. There was genuine fascination rather than hostility in their gazes, but it was intense. The corridors of Verdian Station were elegant and practical, with gently curved walls and ambient lighting that adjusted as they walked. Specialist Tevier walked briskly, occasionally glancing back at Nevin as if to confirm he was still there. "Your quarters are in the residential ring," she explained. "We've adapted the environment to approximate Prisma's atmospheric conditions." "That's very thoughtful," Nevin replied, trying to establish rapport. "But I'm quite adaptable. Chromatians can thrive in a variety of environments as long as there's sufficient light." Tevier stopped walking and turned to face him fully. "The light. Yes, of course. I've been briefed on your photosynthetic capabilities. Fascinating. Would you?" She hesitated. "Would you be willing to demonstrate at some point?" Nevin blinked. What did she expect him to do? Stand under a lamp and glow? "It's not really a performance," he said gently. "It's just how my body absorbs nutrients alongside conventional eating." "Of course," Tevier said quickly, a dusky rose color spreading across her cheeks. "Please forgive my scientific curiosity." They resumed walking in silence until reaching a door that slid open to reveal a spacious room with a large viewport overlooking the gas giant below. The room was bathed in soft light from hidden panels, and a small garden of plants filled one corner. "These quarters should suffice," Tevier said. "The plants are from our hydroponics lab, specimens you'll be working with. We thought you might appreciate their company." Nevin smiled genuinely for the first time since arriving. "They're beautiful, thank you." Tevier seemed to relax slightly. "The environmental controls are here," she indicated a panel by the door. "Dining facilities are communal, one level down. Your work schedule begins at 800 hours tomorrow." She paused, then added, "Is there anything else you require?" Nevin shook his head. "This is perfect, thank you." After Tevier left, Nevin sank onto the bed and exhaled slowly. The journey and the intense reception had drained him. He extended his arm, nodding the deeper blue that had developed, his skin responding to the stress by increasing chlorophyll production. A soft chime from the door interrupted his thoughts. Nevin stood and called, "Enter." The door slid open to reveal a tall Losari with auburn skin and striking geometric patterns along her arms. Her department panel was botanical green, like Tevier's. "Specialist Orlin," she said softly, remaining in the doorway. "I am Pelna, lead botanist. She hesitated, her amber eyes darting away briefly before returning to meet his gaze. "I wish to welcome you personally. Your work on hydroponic efficiency in variable light conditions is inspired." Nevin felt a surge of pleasure. "You've read my research." Pelna nodded, a small smile curving her lips. "All of it. Your techniques could revolutionize our food production. Many of us have been eager for your arrival." "I hope I don't disappoint," Nevin said honestly. "I don't believe you could," Pelna replied, her voice warm. "Rest now, tomorrow will be full." She turned to leave, then paused. "And Nevin, don't mind the starring. We've never seen anyone like you before." As the door closed behind her, Nevin felt something unexpected, a spark of excitement cutting through his anxiety. Pelna had used his first name, breaking the formal protocol he'd witnessed so far, and she'd studied his work, valued it. He turned to look out at the swirling storms of Palu's 7 below, then at the small garden in his room. 3 months on Verdian Station suddenly seemed both too long and not long enough. "Well," he murmured to a delicate fern-like plant, "at least you won't stare at me." The plant's fronds waved gently in response to his breath, almost like a welcome. Nevin smiled. Perhaps he could find his place here after all, one connection at a time. Nevin's first week on Verdian Station passed in a blur of introductions, orientations, and endless curious stares. By the 8th day, his skin had settled into a steady cerulean hue, a sign that his body was adapting to the station's artificial light cycles. The greenhouses, at least, felt like home. There, surrounded by growing things, he could almost forget he was the subject of 87 pairs of watchful eyes. "Almost. Your epidermis responds to emotional states as well as light conditions?" asked Westra, a young Losari biochemist who had taken to following him around the hydroponics lab. She was smaller than most of her species, with cinnamon skin and an endless supply of questions. Nevin adjusted the nutrient flow to a row of luminescent night blooms, plants native to Pullu's Seven's largest moon that produced essential medical compounds. Yes, he answered patiently. Strong emotions can trigger temporary pigmentation shifts. Happiness tends toward turquoise, embarrassment toward violet, anger toward indigo. Fascinating, Westra edged closer, datapad in hand. And what emotion produces that particular shade you're displaying now? Nevin glanced down at his forearm, noting the slight purple tinge beginning to spread. Mild discomfort at being treated like a scientific specimen, he said with a pointed look. Westra froze, her amber eyes widening. Oh, I've offended you, I'm terribly sorry. Her formal demeanor cracked, revealing genuine distress. I didn't mean. Nevin immediately regretted his sharpness. No, I'm sorry, that was unfair, your curiosity is natural. He offered a smile. Let's say we make a deal. For every question you ask about my biology, I get to ask one about Losari culture. That way we're both learning. Westra's worried expression gave way to a surprised smile. An exchange? Yes, that would be equitable. She paused, considering. Although I should warn you, Losari society is quite structured, not nearly as interesting as chromation physiology. I'll be the judge of that, Nevin replied, genuinely curious. The briefing materials on Losari culture had been surprisingly sparse. For instance, I've noticed everyone wears the same uniform but with different colored panels. What do they signify? Westra gestured to her own russet panel. Biochemistry and medical sciences, green for botany and agriculture, blue for engineering and technical operations, gold for administration and communications, purple for physics and astronomy. Her voice took on a lecturing tone. The shade and pattern indicate seniority and specialization. See this small diagonal line? It marks me as a research associate rather than a lead scientist. And the patterns on your skin? Do they have significance too? Nevin had been fascinated by the swirling designs that adorned Losari's skin, unique to each individual. Westra's hand unconsciously traced the delicate whorls on her forearm. Our markings are partially genetic, partially developmental. They reflect our lineage and life experiences. A hint of pride entered her voice. My spiral patterns indicate descent from the western groves of Losaria. Their conversation was interrupted as the hydroponics lab door slid open. Pelna entered, carrying a tray of seedling samples. She nodded politely to Westra before turning to Nevin. Specialist Orlin, I've been analyzing your nutrient formulation adjustments. The growth rates have improved by 17%. Her professional tone couldn't quite mask the excitement in her eyes. It's remarkable. Please, just Nevin, he reminded her, pleased by her approval. And I've barely begun. Once we implement the variable spectrum lighting I've designed, we should see even better results. Pelna set down the tray and approached the control panel where Nevin stood. I've been studying your schematics. The theory is sound, but I'm concerned about power consumption. As they discussed technical details, Nevin became aware of two things. Pelna's proximity, close enough that he could see the subtle gold flecks in her amber eyes, and Westra's intense observation of their interaction. Perhaps I should return later, Westra said, backing toward the door. I have samples to analyze. After she left, Pelna seemed to relax slightly. You've become quite popular, she remarked, adjusting a setting on the nutrient flow system. Half the station is finding reasons to visit the hydroponics lab. Nevin sighed. I'm not used to so much attention. On Prisma, I'm just another blue shade. I can imagine it's overwhelming. Pelna's voice softened. The Losari value knowledge highly, perhaps too highly sometimes. We can forget there's a person behind the fascinating biology. Her understanding touched him. Thank you, that means a lot. They worked side by side for the next hour, falling into a comfortable rhythm. Pelna's expertise complemented his own, and he found himself explaining his ideas without the need to simplify or justify them. It was refreshing. I've been meaning to ask, Nevin said as they finished adjusting the last growth chamber. What exactly are these plants used for? They're unlike any species I've encountered before. Pelna's expression brightened with passion. They're indigenous to the Pulu system. This variety, she gently touched a silver-leafed plant with her slender fingers, produces compounds that can treat neural degradation. And these, she indicated a cluster of bioluminescent blue flowers, contain powerful antiviral properties. You're developing medicines. Pelna nodded. Verdian Station's primary mission is medical research and xenobotany. Many of these species were unknown to the Galactic Union until we established this outpost. Pride colored her voice. We've already developed treatments for 3 previously incurable conditions. That's incredible work, Nevin said sincerely. No wonder the station received priority for the exchange program. Speaking of which, Pelna said, her tone shifting to something more hesitant, the Cultural Exchange Committee has scheduled your first presentation for tomorrow evening. All station personnel will attend. Nevin felt a flicker of anxiety. Presentation? I wasn't informed of this. It's standard protocol for exchange visitors, an opportunity to share your cultural background with the station complement. Seeing his expression, she added quickly, it's nothing formal, just an introduction to Chromatian society, customs, perhaps some images of your homeworld. I see. Nevin tried to hide his discomfort. Public speaking had never been his strength, and the thought of addressing all 87 Losari at once was daunting. Pelna seemed to sense his unease. I could help you prepare if you'd like. My quarters have a larger viewing screen than yours. We could organize your materials there. The offer surprised him. From what he'd observed, Losari were quite private about their personal spaces. That would be very helpful, he said, trying not to read too much into the invitation. Later that evening, Nevin stood outside Pelna's quarters, clutching his data crystal containing images and information about Prisma. He straightened his tunic, a deep blue garment that complemented his skin, and pressed the door chime. Pelna's quarters were larger than his and arranged with meticulous care. Delicate sculptures of crystal and metal adorned the surfaces, and one wall displayed a large painting of what he assumed was the Losari homeworld, rolling hills covered in golden vegetation under twin suns. Please sit, Pelna gestured to a seating area near a large viewport. She had changed from her uniform into a flowing garment of deep green that accentuated her tall, willowy frame. Would you care for refreshment? I have synthesized some beverages that should be compatible with your physiology. Thank you, Nevin said, noticing how different she seemed here, away from the lab and other eyes. More relaxed, less formal. She returned with 2 glasses of a pale golden liquid. Nectar from the singing flowers of Lossaria, she explained. Slightly sweet with mild relaxant properties. Nevin took a cautious sip and was pleasantly surprised by the delicate flavor. It's lovely. They spent the next hour organizing his presentation. Pelna was knowledgeable and helpful, offering suggestions on which aspects of Chromatian culture might most interest the Losari scientists. As they worked, the conversation gradually shifted from professional to personal. I've shared so much about my world, Nevin said, setting aside his datapad. Tell me about you. How did you come to be on Verdian Station? Pelna's gaze turned to the viewport, where Pulu's 7 swirling storms created an ever-changing canvas. I volunteered. Most Losari prefer to remain on our homeworld or established colonies, but I've always been drawn to discovery. A small smile played at her lips. My family thought it quite improper. Unmarried females aren't typically sent to remote postings. Unmarried? Nevin echoed, suddenly curious about Losari social structures. Is marriage important in your culture? Central, Pelna replied. Losari typically bond in their 3rd decade and establish family units. Those who don't, she hesitated, are viewed as somewhat incomplete. And you chose this instead, he gestured to the station around them. I chose knowledge, she said simply. The patterns of life fascinate me more than the patterns of society. She turned her amber gaze back to him. And you, do Chromatians form pair bonds? Nevin nodded. We do, though not with the same social expectations, perhaps. Chromatians are drawn to complementary energies. Often different shade types are attracted to each other. Blue shades like me commonly bond with green shades or purple shades. Because of the complementary light absorption spectra? Pelna asked, her scientific mind clearly engaged. Partly biology, partly cultural tradition, Nevin explained. When different shades join hands, our skin creates beautiful phosphorescent patterns where we touch. It's considered intimate. How remarkable, Pelna murmured. Her eyes dropped to his blue hand resting on the table, and for a moment he thought she might reach for it. Instead, she stood abruptly. It's getting late. You should rest before tomorrow's presentation. As Nevin walked back to his quarters, he reflected on their conversation. Something had shifted between them, a connection forming that went beyond professional courtesy. It both excited and unsettled him. He had come to Verdian Station to share botanical knowledge, not to form personal attachments. Yet as he prepared for sleep, Nevin couldn't help but wonder what phosphorescent patterns might form if his blue skin were to touch Pelna's auburn tones. The next morning brought an unexpected complication. Nevin arrived at the hydroponics lab to find not only Pelna waiting, but also Zindel, the station's environmental systems specialist. Tall even for a Losari, with striking copper skin and elaborate markings, Zindel had made her interest in Nevin clear from his first day on station. "Specialist Orlin," she greeted him with a warm smile. "I've come to discuss integrating your lighting designs with our environmental controls." "Oh, of course," Nevin replied, nodding the slight stiffening of Pelna's posture. Throughout the morning, Zindel found numerous reasons to stand close to him, ask for his direct input, and once even touched his arm, a gesture that, given Losari reserve, seemed significant. Her technical questions were legitimate, but her manner was unmistakably personal. When Zindel finally departed, Pelna approached Nevin with unusual formality. "I should inform you that Zindel holds high status among our complement. Her family lineage is quite prestigious." There was something careful in her tone. "I see," Nevin said, though he didn't entirely. "Is that important here on the station?" Pelna hesitated. "Social hierarchies exist everywhere, even in scientific outposts. I merely thought you should be aware." She returned to her workstation without further explanation. By evening, Nevin's anxiety about his presentation was compounded by confusion over the day's interactions. As he stood before the assembled station complement in the main gathering hall, he forced himself to focus on the task at hand. "Thank you for welcoming me to Verdian Station," he began, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'm honored to share with you the world and culture of Prisma, home of the Chromatians." The large screen behind him illuminated with images of his homeworld, a planet of vibrant crystalline formations, rainbow skis, and cities built to maximize light filtration. As he described Chromatian society, agriculture, and art, he saw genuine fascination in the amber eyes watching him. When he concluded, the questions began, thoughtful, insightful queries about Chromatian language, social structures, and biology. Nevin answered each one patiently, growing more comfortable as the session continued. "One final question," Administrator Jorani said, rising from her seat. "Chromatians are known to be intensely private and rarely leave their homeworld. You are the first to join the exchange program. Why did you choose to come to Verdian Station?" The direct question caught Nevin off guard. He considered his answer carefully. "On Prisma, I was defined by my shade, one blue shade among many. Here," he gestured around the room, "I am defined by my knowledge, my contributions. I came seeking new growth, both scientific and personal." His gaze briefly met Pelna's across the room. "And already I've found it." A murmur of approval rippled through the gathering. As the formal session ended and refreshments were served, Nevin found himself surrounded by Losari scientists eager to continue the conversation. Among them was Zindel, who presented him with a small crystal sculpture. "A token of appreciation for your illuminating presentation," she said, her voice carrying enough for nearby Losari to hear. "Perhaps you might join me for a private tour of the Environmental Control Center tomorrow." Before Nevin could respond, Pelna appeared at his side. "I'm afraid Specialist Orlin's schedule is quite full tomorrow. We have critical adjustments to make to the hydroponics systems." Her tone was perfectly professional, but something in her stance suggested territorialism. Zindel's eyes narrowed slightly. "Another time, then," she said, touching Nevin's arm briefly before departing. As the gathering dispersed, Nevin turned to Pelna. "What was that about? We don't have any critical adjustments scheduled for tomorrow." Pelna's usual composure faltered. "You don't understand Losari social dynamics. Zindel's attention is politically motivated. Her family seeks influence through new alliances." "And that concerns you because?" Nevin prompted, suddenly curious about her reaction. Pelna met his gaze directly. "Because genuine connection should be based on mutual understanding and respect, not advantage." She took a breath, then added more softly, "And because I believe we've begun to develop such a connection." Before Nevin could respond, they were interrupted by Administrator Jorani, and the moment passed. But as he retired to his quarters that night, Nevin realized his time on Verdian Station had become far more complicated than he'd anticipated. His skin had taken on a distinct turquoise hue, the chromation manifestation of excitement and anticipation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and not just in the hydroponics lab. Nevin awoke to flashing red lights and a blaring alarm. His room's environmental system displayed a warning. Station-wide atmospheric pressure fluctuation detected. All personnel report to designated safety zones. He dressed quickly, his skin darkening to a deep navy blue, the chromation response to danger. The corridor outside his quarters was filled with Losari moving purposefully toward their emergency stations. Their usual grace remained, but their amber eyes betrayed concern. Nevin, Pelna appeared through the crowd, relief evident on her face. "Come with me. Botanical personnel are gathering in Hydroponics Section 3. As they hurried through the corridors, Nevin noticed the station's subtle vibration, a tremor that shouldn't exist in a properly functioning space station. "What's happening?" "Orbital stabilizers have malfunctioned," Pelna explained, her voice steady despite the situation. "We're experiencing gravitational shear from Pullu's 7. They reached the hydroponics section, where a dozen Losari botanists were already securing sensitive equipment and plant specimens. Administrator Jorani stood at a central console, her silver-marked face illuminated by emergency lighting. "Specialist Orlin," she acknowledged him with a nod. "We have a critical situation. The primary stabilizer array has failed, and the backups are operating at 30% efficiency." "Can engineering repair it?" Nevin asked. "Not quickly enough. The station is being pulled into an unstable orbit. If we don't restore stabilization within 4 hours, structural integrity will begin to fail." The gravity of the situation hit Nevin like a physical force. 88 lives were at risk, including his own. Zindel entered, followed by her environmental systems team. "Administrator, we've isolated the problem. A cascading power failure has compromised the stabilizer control system." She glanced at Nevin, then continued. "But we can't restore it without replacing the control circuit arrays, which would take at least 9 hours. "We don't have 9 hours, Jorani stated flatly. "Options." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Nevin found himself thinking of the native plants they'd been studying, particularly the bioluminescent varieties that generated their own electrical fields. An idea began to form. "What if," he began hesitantly, aware that he was about to suggest something unconventional to highly trained specialists. "What if we create a biological circuit bridge?" All eyes turned to him. "The Luminara plants," he continued with more confidence. "They generate bioelectric fields that respond to external stimulation. If we could harvest enough of them and create a networked array, we might be able to channel power through them to stabilize the system until proper repairs can be made." Zindel frowned. "Plants as circuit components, that's—" "Brilliant," Pelna interrupted, her eyes wide with realization. "The Luminara's cellular structure can conduct electrical impulses in a directed manner. With the right setup, they could indeed form temporary circuit pathways." Administrator Jorani looked between them. "Would this work?" "In theory," Zindel admitted reluctantly, "but it would require precise calibration and a massive number of specimens." "We have enough in cultivation," Pelna countered. "Section 5 has 3 full growth chambers of mature Luminara." Jorani made her decision quickly. "Proceed. Specialist Orlin, lead this operation with Specialists Pelna and Zindel. I want hourly progress reports." The next 2 hours passed in a blur of activity. Nevin worked alongside the Losari scientists, harvesting the delicate luminescent plants and preparing them for their new purpose. His hands moved confidently, demonstrating the skill that had made him renowned on Prisma. "The stems must be connected in parallel," he instructed, demonstrating the technique. "Their electroconductive properties will amplify if aligned correctly." To his surprise, the Losari followed his directions without question. Even Zindel, who had initially seemed skeptical, now watched him with newfound respect. "Your approach is unorthodox," she commented as they worked side by side, connecting the bioluminescent stems to makeshift conduits. "But ingenious." "Sometimes the best solutions come from unexpected sources," Nevin replied, aware of Pelna working nearby, her slender fingers moving with practiced precision. By the third hour, they had created a sprawling network of glowing plant matter, connected to the station's power distribution system. The bioluminescent stems pulsed with blue-green light, stronger than Nevin had ever seen from these specimens. "They're responding to the emergency," Pelna observed, standing close beside him. "Plants sense stress in ways we're only beginning to understand." "Like people do," Nevin murmured, noticing how the crisis had broken down some of the formal barriers between himself and the Losari. There was no time for cultural distance when survival was at stake. Administrator Jorani entered the control room. "Station structural integrity is at 84% and declining. Is your solution ready?" Nevin exchanged glances with Pelner and Zindel. "As ready as it can be," he answered. "We should activate now." Jorani nodded. "Proceed." Zindel initiated the sequence, redirecting power through the biological circuit array. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Luminara plants began to pulse intensely, their bioluminescence shifting from blue-green to a brilliant violet. The station's vibration gradually subsided. "It's working," Zindel announced, her voice uncharacteristically emotional. "Orbital stabilizers now at 68% capacity and rising." A collective sigh of relief spread through the room. Nevin felt a hand squeeze his, Pelna, her amber eyes shining with something more than just professional admiration. He squeezed back, aware that in this moment of shared accomplishment, something deeper had formed between them. "Well done," Administrator Jorani said, her formal demeanor softening slightly. "You've bought us the time needed for proper repairs." The next 12 hours were devoted to monitoring the biological circuit array and assisting the engineering team with permanent repairs. Nevin worked tirelessly, his blue skin taking on a deeper hue as his body diverted resources to maintain his energy. Several times, he caught Losari scientists watching him with fascinated expressions as his skin tone shifted. When the crisis finally ended and the station returned to normal operations, Nevin retreated to his quarters, exhausted but satisfied. He had just settled onto his sleep platform when his door chime sounded. "Enter," he called, expecting perhaps Administrator Jorani with a debriefing request. Instead, Pelna stepped through the doorway, carrying a small container. She had changed from her uniform into a simple robe of soft amber fabric that complemented her skin tone. "I thought you might need this," she said, offering the container. "It's a nutrient solution specifically calibrated for chromation physiology. I synthesized it based on your biological data." Touched by her thoughtfulness, Nevin accepted the gift. "Thank you. I was starting to feel the energy depletion." Pelna hesitated, then seated herself at the edge of his room. "Your solution today was remarkable. You've earned the respect of everyone on this station." Nevin shrugged modestly. "It was a collaborative effort." "It was your vision," she insisted. "Most importantly, you showed the Losari a different way of thinking. We can be." She searched for the right word, rigid in our approaches. "Different perspectives are valuable," Nevin said, taking a drink of the nutrient solution. It was perfectly balanced, sweet, revitalizing exactly what his system needed. "This is excellent, by the way." Pelna smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her usually reserved features. "I'm glad. She stopped abruptly as the door chime sounded again. This time it was Zindel who entered, also bearing a gift, a small crystalline sculpture similar to the one she had presented after his cultural presentation, but more elaborate. "Specialist Orlin," she said formally, though her eyes softened when they fell on him. "I've come to express my admiration for your innovative solution today." She noticed Pelna and added with slightly less warmth, "Specialist Pelna, I didn't expect to find you here." An awkward silence filled the room. Nevin sensed undercurrents he didn't fully understand, but could feel the tension between the two Losari women. "I was just providing Nevin with some nutrients," Pelna explained, standing. "I should return to my quarters." "Actually," Nevin said, not wanting her to leave, "I was hoping you could explain more about the Luminara's adaptive properties. Your insights today were invaluable." Pelna paused, glancing between Nevin and Zindel. "Perhaps another time you need rest." With a formal nod to both of them, she departed. When the door closed behind her, Zindel moved closer to Nevin. "She's quite attentive to your needs," she observed. "Pelna is a friend," Nevin said carefully. "We work well together." "Indeed." Zindel placed the crystal sculpture on a nearby surface. This is a status token from my family's collection. It represents achievement and new alliances. I would be honored if you would accept it. Nevin recognized the gesture as significant but wasn't sure of its full implications. It's beautiful, he said truthfully. Thank you. Zindel smiled, seeming pleased. I've also come to invite you to the observation gallery tomorrow evening. The twin moons of Pullu's 7 will be aligned, a spectacular sight. The invitation was clearly personal rather than professional. Nevin considered his response carefully. Zindel was brilliant, accomplished, and clearly interested in him. Yet his thoughts kept returning to Pelna, to their easy connection, her understanding of his work, the feel of her hand in his during the crisis. That sounds wonderful, he said politely. Would others from the science team be joining us? A flicker of something, disappointment, crossed Zindel's features. I had envisioned a more private viewing, but if you prefer company. Perhaps a small group would be nice, Nevin suggested, trying to navigate the unfamiliar social waters. You, me, Pelna, maybe Westra from biochemistry. Zindel stiffened slightly. As you wish, I'll extend the invitations. She moved toward the door, then turned back. Nevin, you should know that on Verdian Station, as on Lossaria, alliances matter. Some connections are more advantageous than others. After she left, Nevin sat contemplating her words and the status token she had.